Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, that's us live now. So, good evening, Lucia. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yes.
I'm good, and hoping that we can get through this without any more internet problems.
Well, that would be good, wouldn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So apparently you've been around the house telling everybody to leave their internet alone for 15, 20 minutes, yeah?
Yeah, they've all been banned from going online until I've finished.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. And I suppose, just in case people will wonder, obviously I am your older brother. You are my second oldest sister.
Your second oldest sister. You've only got one up. Oh, I suppose the oldest of the two sisters. Yeah.
That's right. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Older of two. There's a younger one, isn't there? What's her name again? I keep forgetting her name.
She'll be on next week.
Yes. Yeah. And now I did do a bit of checking up.
Yeah.
As one does. And you're a psychotherapist, not a psychotherapist, or a psychic therapist. What's the difference between somebody that's a psychotherapist and somebody that's a psychic?
Well, a psychic is somebody that perhaps acts as a medium and is able to channel messages from the other side, or have kind of psychic abilities like telepathy or those kinds of things. Whereas a psychotherapist works with people, real people in the living world, and helps them to find ways to cope with their problems.
All right. Lovely. So you're not a psychic?
No.
You've not got a crystal ball?
No crystal balls, no.
And any tarot cards?
Not on me, no.
Right, okay. It's just I believe it or not, we have had people do videos about, trying to connect psychically with, for example, Teresa Halbach, who is, the person that was supposedly murdered by Steve and Brendan. And also we have had people, I have even seen somebody doing a tarot card reading on, But that's not actually your field of expertise, although you are aware of that, should I say?
Absolutely, yes. We all have our skills in life, and I'm going to stick to the psychotherapy.
The psychotherapy. So that's, as you say, it's helping people dealing with their sort of psychological issues.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason I got in touch with you because I really wanted to ask you about the psychology of people such as myself, and you can be blunt, painfully honest about it. People such as your older brother who is obsessed with something like making a murderer. Whether it's healthy or not, or what on earth are we up to? And I did explain that, as well as having people like myself who are called truthers, we have others that are known as guilters. Yes. And the good news is that you have actually watched all of Making a Murderer. And speaking not as a psychotherapist, but just as a person that watched Making a Murderer, what were your thoughts on it?
I thought it was a really interesting program. I thought I only watched the first series on Netflix. It was some time ago. So I haven't been following the Stephen Avery or Brendan Dassey case in anywhere near as much detail as you were.
Right.
I thought the documentary was really well put together, and I thought the lawyers arguing for Stephen Avery, and is it his cousin?
His nephew.
I thought they made a very compelling case, and that certainly from the documentary, the evidence they presented shines considerable doubt on their conviction for being guilty.
Yeah. Well, believe it or not, in series 2, what we find is this super lawyer comes along who then proceeds to show, although she hasn't had her time in court yet, proceeds to show the rest of the world exactly how they achieved the framing up that they did. But anyway, we're not here to talk about that. Let me pop the first slide up, shall I?
Okay.
And you can then talk us through it. Hopefully this will work as well.
It's
So if
looking
I do,
promising. Yeah.
it is looking promising. You'd be surprised what I've learned since I've moved up here to Scotland. So the title is Truth and Guilt Psychology.
Yeah.
And if we move down to the next slide, we're dealing, of course, with, well, there he is,
Yes.
Brendan Dassey,
Mm-hmm.
and a rather iconic picture of Stephen Avery. Stephen Avery as a little lad of, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5,
Yeah.
and in one of his jail shots. And so if we move on down again,
What is a cult?
What is a cult?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question. And traditionally, cults there are certain characteristics of cults. One of the characteristics is that they often involve a very, very charismatic leader, a
Right.
really strong individual who can recruit and gather supporters.
Mm-hmm.
They often revolve around a religious ideology.
Right.
So, and they will expect their supporters or their loyal adherents to sign up in a way to a certain way, to certain beliefs, to certain practices.
Mm-hmm.
They're often quite secretive as well.
Sure.
They um, they have a tendency, I think, to recruit their supporters from perhaps often vulnerable people, perhaps people who feel a little bit lost in the world, and people who are looking for some meaning and purpose and a sense of family and connection. So
Right.
those are types of people that might be drawn into a cult. But
Right.
the classical understanding, it's a very charismatic leader with strong practice and principles around religious ideology.
Sure. But as I say, I think you mentioned the word secretive.
Yes.
So who are these people here?
Okay. So
Which one is you, Lucia?
well, that looks to me like the Druids at Stonehenge.
Right. Okay. And are they kind of secretive?
I don't know that they're that secretive. For me, I don't know that I would classify the Druids, especially as a cult.
Right.
I don't think there's a charismatic leader that they follow blindly commands or certain practices. I think that the Druids perhaps we'd perhaps say that they're more of a religious group.
Right. Okay.
Perhaps their orientation is towards very early religion and pagan traditions.
But I mean, extremely harmful, no doubt, aren't they? I mean, it's you wouldn't want to come within miles of a Druid, would you?
My experience of Druids is that they're very, very peaceful, caring, loving people.
Right. Okay. I'm glad we put that one to bed, because that was slightly tongue in cheek on my behalf.
Yeah.
So maybe this is more our idea of a cult.
That's certainly more the image that springs to mind when we think of cults. This group here looks to me like they could very well belong to perhaps the Children of God organisations.
Right.
The Moonies, of course, were we could also classify them as a cult. I mean, if you look at them, they're all wearing the same colour. They're all worshipping something, in some way. So I think that image probably fits more closely the image of a cult.
Sure. I mean, they don't seem to be too miserable. They seem to be enjoying themselves. There's a little kid there with a bit of a smile on his face, isn't there?
Yes, and there are lots of religious groups and movements all over the place that have their own beliefs and traditions. I think that one of the characteristics of a cult is what happens when you try and leave.
Yes.
but I think, some of the difficulties with the cult is that they may put an awful lot of undue pressure on somebody not to leave.
Right. Okay. Okay then. So, well, let's see what I can't. I put this all together last night at about 2:00 in the morning and couldn't believe that it finally all came together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are people who are truthers, could they be described as being in a cult?
Well, if you're talking about truthers that are supporters of Stephen and Brandon,
Yeah.
I don't think they are a cult. I
No.
think it seems to me that they come together out of a sense of injustice,
Right.
out of a sense of that there's a miscarriage of justice here.
Mm-hmm.
They don't display, from what I can see on Facebook and from, there was a Netflix program about it, which isn't traditionally what you would see cults using. There doesn't appear to be any charismatic leader, and it seems to me that people are free to come and go, express their opinions, however they, whatever they are. So I don't think that people who are supporting Stephen and Brendan necessarily are a cult at all. Although maybe there are some similarities between perhaps the people who may become involved, some of the personality traits.
Righty-ho. Just a quick shout out for Fleetside. I've done 6 videos with him where he's put together slides, and I've finally come of age, Fleetside. You'll be pleased to see that I've finally managed to get some PowerPoint type presentation put together. I'm particularly chuffed with myself, but anyway, here we go. Next slide. So I'm used to see. I've done 6 videos with a gentleman called Fleetside.
Oh.
And he does something similar with his presentations. So are guilters a cult? I suppose if we're in a cult, I mean, well, can we answer that question in a little while?
Okay.
Because I think you might find that maybe the guilters tick more boxes than truthers.
Well, that'd be interesting.
Well, as you said.
Yeah, cults have a leader, and that's one of the distinguishing characteristics of being in a cult, is that there is a charismatic leader who holds an awful lot of power.
Sure. Well, we've got several leaders.
Okay. We
have several leaders. Here's one of them that you wouldn't have seen in series 1. Now this is Kathleen Zellner. She is, I believe, the most successful post-conviction attorney in America.
Okay.
When she gets Stephen Avery out, she will have freed 20 wrongfully convicted people.
Oh goodness.
Yeah. It's quite astounding what this lady has done. And also what impresses me about it is her integrity. She's she's able to go into the American court systems, it's incredibly difficult to try and get people to admit to having done a mistake. Once somebody's guilty in America, it is incredibly difficult to correct that error. Although, in fairness, they are starting to do that. And I would just like to point out that, we don't sit here in the UK smugly looking at America saying, oh, look at them lot, it would never happen here. It does. Stefan Kitchko was a famous case back in the 70s. And here in Edinburgh, we've got an ongoing case with a lad who was only 16 or 17 when he was arrested and charged with murdering his girlfriend. And there seems to be, again, quite a lot of reasonable doubt. Anyway, so Kathleen Zellner, she's the attorney now for Stephen Avery.
Right.
Now, this lady you did see in series 1.
Yes.
This is Laura Nyrider, who is very close to Brendan and has been his attorney. And this is Professor Steve Drizzen, who is, he was basically Laura Nyrider's professor, and now the pair of them work together on Brendan's case, on Brendan's behalf. Because, of course, the interesting thing about Brendan is the only thing that convicted him was his confession.
Yes.
There was zero DNA of his, anywhere to be found. There was zero DNA of Teresa to be found anywhere. But, and then this is the lawyer that you did get to see in Making a Murderer. This is Jerry Butin. I've had the pleasure of seeing him 3 times now.
Right.
Yeah. Twice in Edinburgh and once in Amsterdam.
Okay.
Yeah, Amsterdam was good. That was a couple of years back. Amsterdam. You've been to Amsterdam?
I haven't been to Amsterdam. No.
It's quite a forward think. I mean, am I right in saying that I've always thought, and maybe you have as well, Holland, sorry, the Netherlands is a very forward thinking country, kind of very liberal,
Yes.
Not set in the dark ages. So anyway, there's Jerry Buting. He wrote a book, you see, called Illusion of Justice. And obviously there you see him in court with the judge, Mr. Patrick Willis, and obviously Steve, and you can see a clip of Brendan there. But anyway, let's move on down. Yes, Inside Making a Murder. And this is Dean Stroud. I bet you were quite impressed with him. He was very eloquent, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Came up with some great one-liners, particularly like the one, that the state are supposed to be swimming upstream constantly, and they're supposed to be swimming against the the flow of presumption of innocence.
Yes.
I've completely butchered what he said, but he said it very well, didn't he?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know who this is?
No, who's that?
That's the dude from The Big Lebowski. And we have we have a guy called Eric Jose, who's a good friend of mine. Here he is with another very good friend, Stacy. And in a way, the dude Eric Jose, he's a bit of a leader. A lot of people follow what he does. He's acknowledged as being just about the biggest and best name when it comes to the sort of truther community. So anyway, that's
okay.
So his nickname is the Dude. I nicknamed him the Dude. Hence the Jeffrey Lebowski. And here is the Dude himself with his banner. Now, as I say, we've got lots of leaders. As far as the guilders are concerned, they have one leader.
Okay. Yep. And
you'll remember him.
Oh, okay.
Well, what did you think about him? Ken Kratz.
Yeah, no, I can't remember him that clearly. You'll have to jog my memory.
You're the lucky one. He was the one that held that appalling press conference when he went on to explain exactly what Brendan had confessed to without any of it ever having been corroborated.
Right. Yes.
And
so he's acting as leader.
Well, we then discovered after the conviction, after he managed to secure the conviction of Steve and Brendan in two different scenarios, that he had a bit of an addiction. Drugs and sexting women. He would phone up and text clients, particularly those who had been involved in domestic abuse, trying to spark up relationships. So maybe he's a bit more of your typical cult leader. This would be the ideal Ken Kratz scenario, surrounded by a load of nymphs to look after him.
Yeah. Well, I imagine if somebody who approaches victims or vulnerable people may very well fit into that character of, creating a following around him of vulnerable people.
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting is that the Guilder community, they are like your secretive cult because they do remain anonymous. They never, ever go under their own name. Indeed, even Ken Kratz himself has got several pseudonyms. He goes under the name of Charles Darwin on YouTube.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's an interesting thing to do, isn't it?
And everybody that gets in touch with me, you get people like somebody that calls themselves Woodpecker Woody, or just stating the truth, or you get them called what else? Oh, some character called Dorian Hawkmoon, from a novel, you know. And I say Charles Darwin, who's obviously no longer with us.
Yes.
So I would put it to you that, in fact, rather, you see, the thing is, they always, the Guilters always say that we're lovers of Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey. We're part of this cult followers of Stephen and Brendan. And yet I would suggest that rather than us being in a cult, it's actually the Guilters that are ticking more boxes than we do.
It would certainly, on the face of it, would seem that, wouldn't it? And I wonder what their explanation is for wanting to remain anonymous rather than having the real courage of their convictions and stand by their words in their own name.
Well, that's an interesting thing. One wonders if they've got a little bit more stake in what's going on than they want to admit. Maybe some of them know people involved in the case, or either sort of very closely or somewhat less closely involved in the case. One of the judges who has so far done her utmost to try and prevent justice being done is a local judge in Sheboygan, which is just about 10-15 miles from Manitowoc, a judge called Angela Sukovich. And she even had somebody send her flowers for denying one of the hearings. It turned out that the person who had sent the flowers was actually related to, was like a cousin of the district attorney, Dennis Vogel, who was responsible for securing the conviction of Stephen Avery back in 1985. If you remember, he was found guilty in 1985 of attacking Penny Bernstein on the shore of Lake Michigan, when in fact, he was actually at the salvage yard, and there were 20 odd witnesses that said yes, he was at the salvage yard, and then he went off to Green Bay, and there's got a receipt that's timed, but they still managed to convict him based on this eyewitness account of the victim.
Right.
And it was funny how the person that sent flowers to the judge that's being awkward in this case, as I say, was related to Dennis Vogel, who see Teresa Holbach disappeared literally 15 days before the two main people involved in securing this wrongful conviction against Stephen Avery were having to face an interview about their involvement in that, because Steve was suing them for $36 million.
Right.
It's a bizarre story, because once Stephen Avery is exonerated this second time, he'll be the first person in American history to have been wrongfully convicted twice.
Yeah.
Anyway, so if we're not a cult, I've put what then what? Yeah. So as I say, maybe on certain levels, because we have several leaders, we're certainly a group of individuals, but I wouldn't describe us as being a cult, or being considered, as some cults are considered at times, to be dangerous. As you say, trying to leave a cult is probably the most dangerous thing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's often where the danger lies, at how difficult it can be for people to leave.
Right.
In terms of what inspires, the truthers and the people that have gathered around Stephen Avery and Brendan,
yeah,
be fueled or inspired by a sense for justice,
yeah,
a sense for truth, and a knowing that wrongful convictions not only harm the victims but actually harms everybody.
Yeah,
it has an impact for the whole of society, doesn't it? And we've certainly had wrongful convictions here in the UK, as you said, and got a history of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people can also empathise with people accused of doing something that they haven't done.
Sure.
We might all kind of come to that place of thinking, well, what if that was me or my family or somebody that I knew? It's not just the victims themselves that suffer in these situations. And, it seems to me that the truthers have gathered around this or inspired by that sense of injustice.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose one of the things that I asked myself when I first started off was, why am I so curious? Why would I want to even consider phoning the sheriff of Manitowoc? And I did that on at least a dozen occasions and spoke to him about the case. Why am I phoning him from sort of 4,600 miles away? So the question, what inspires us? It is. It's something that we don't want to see in our own country, and we certainly don't want to see in other countries. And America is not supposed to be the leader of the free world. Is that not what they proclaim?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
I think, as you said earlier on, that once a culprit has been found,
yeah,
I think when crimes are committed, I think it's understandable that people do want to find the culprit and the perpetrator, and maybe it doesn't matter to them so much. They want somebody found, and whether it's the accurate or the right person or not, maybe that's less important. And I think, as time goes on, the more times you believe something that isn't true or tell yourself that somebody's guilty, I think the more you can convince yourself of the truth of that, rather than looking at the facts and the evidence.
Yeah, okay, if I move on to the next slide, because we might come back to what you've just said there. What inspires us, first of all, is the fact that we feel, in particular, that Teresa hasn't been received, as it says here. We strongly believe that full truth and justice for Teresa Halbach has not yet been achieved. The unanswered questions could be solved by you. And at that time, there was a $10,000 reward for information. It's now up to $100,000 reward for anybody with information that would lead to the conviction of the true culprits.
Yeah.
So there's certainly a lot of interest.
A movement that want justice for the victim.
And here is Teresa Halbach,
Okay.
the victim in all of this. Quite a nice photograph of Teresa there. And by all accounts, she was a very nice person. And this is a.
Okay. Yes.
This reminds me of another saying that that the truth will always come out. Three things that you can rely on is the sun will come out, the moon will come out, and the truth will come out.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and let's hope that it does sooner rather than much later.
Yep. And that was a quote by none other than Stephen Avery. And this was part of the, I believe it was the trailer for the second series.
Okay.
Okay. So you've kind of touched on this already, but what inspires guilters?
Well, if you're talking about, some of the things that you've alluded to earlier is that some of the people involved with this have some kind of vested interest in Stephen Avery being guilty. And, I think people can work very hard to protect him, then they're obviously being motivated by something other than the truth.
Yes, I mean, but you kind of touched on the fact that really what it is there's this. Well, according to the press conference, this horrible crime. Well, somebody being murdered, it's a horrible crime, and they just need somebody to pin it on. And once they've been given somebody to pin it on, they can't let it.
In community.
No, we appear to have.
I think we just had a bit of a bit of internet problem then.
Yes, let's see if we can carry on then. We'll go back to the slide.
Okay, it seems to be back now.
So,
Yeah, what inspires creators? Yes, I think sometimes there can be scapegoats made. Perhaps anybody that may be not popular in a community, or somebody that's not liked, or people that perhaps have a vested interest, then maybe there is to pin it on somebody to protect themselves.
Yeah, I mean, in Harry Potter, the Professor Sprout is Miriam Margolyes. This is really annoying when the internet keeps flickering in and out. No, we do seem to have lost Lucia. We were doing very well for a while there.
Doing very well for a while there, but it just seems to have dropped out now.
Okay, we'll crack on and hope, because we've only got a couple more slides to go. Let's hope that we can get finished, and then
I think we got about half an hour.
Yes. So the next slide I've put up is obviously they're for me they're trying to perpetuate a wrongful conviction, which just seems bizarre. Why would you want to do that unless you've got some sort of vested interest, as you say, and false imprisonment. And then a bit of Benjamin Disraeli.
Yes. Yeah, justice, truth in action. So true.
And we hope that very soon that justice will be on its way.
Let's hope. Justice is coming.
Right, well, let's switch that off. No, we do seem to have lost Lucia completely this time. So.
There you are.
Oh, there you are. I thought you'd sneaked off.
Did we nearly get to the end?
Yeah, we got to the end. I thought you'd sneaked off to the fridge to get another beer.
Sneaked off before the end.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining me, and we must do this again. What you need to do is watch series 2 and then let me know what you think. Okay.
Okay, I'll have a look at season 2 as well and see how things went.
Excellent, and give my best to that husband of yours. and
yes, I will. Yeah.
And the rest of the clan down there. Okay.
Yeah, well, they're all fine. We're all locked down together in Devon. So
yes, yeah. Deepest, darkest Devon. In fact, not far from the town of Totnes, which was described to me as one of the most bohemian towns in England. It was apparently the last town in England to use currency, to adopt the pound. Is that right?
Oh, I didn't know that, but it is. It's certainly a very interesting place to live, and it's a nice town.
Yes. Yeah. You're not in Totnes though. You're quite a bit away.
A little bit away.
3 or 4 miles away. Yeah. Okay then. Well, give my best wishes to everybody down there in deepest, darkest Devon. And, See you later. See you later, wee sister.
All right. Bye.
Love you lots. Bye.